Spanish. And so I think we can start. So good morning, everybody. My name is Patrizia Morgante. I'm in charge of communication for USIG, and for technical problems, you can address me, and I will hand over to Flavia Fiocchi from Edizioni San Paolo di Milano. Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for participating in this meeting. Small correction for Patrizia. I'm an editor of Edizioni San Paolo, but no problem. We do everything, multitasking. I had the pleasure to follow Alessandra in the development of the book that we are going to share with you today. And I should like to thank Patrizia for organizing this meeting. USG, and all of you who are participating in this webinar. So I should like to thank Sister Alessandra for sharing with us Edizioni San Paolo this work of her, which of course I'm a little bit partial. It's very interesting. It's of paramount importance in this post-COVID crisis, and this allows us to think about what we've lived through over the last few months, and its a prospect for the future. So I have a question for her on the book that we are going to introduce and to focus on today. It's a very simple question. It's maybe a trivial question, but it's important to introduce the theme. It's not your first book, Alessandra, Sister Alessandra, because you have a literary past behind you, but it's sort of, if you allow me to say so, it's the focus on your studies until today and of your commitment, scientific commitment, in terms of spreading information about the economy. So I should like to ask you to introduce us the gist of the book. And since we've lived this together, what was the origin of the idea of writing such a volume focused on the economy from the feminine viewpoint? Of course, it's crystallized in today's world, but you also share sort of feminine thinking dating back to the last 150 years. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me and for giving me the possibility of sharing with you all this. And should also like to thank for the possibility that I've had to write this volume. It's a volume that retraces my research studies and the themes that over the years I've dealt with in my dealing with the economy. And over the years, I realized that every time I addressed a theme, I wanted to understand whether behind developing such theme there was a special feminine contribution. Why? Because as I say in the introduction, well, the economy and the economy and the economic science has always been developed around men, and it couldn't have been different over the years when the economic science emancipated in the late 1700s, in the late 18th century. But there's not been women keeping abreast of this, and as in scientific disciplines, the percentages are different for men and women, and yet we see an increase of women addressing scientific themes. So amongst the youngsters, we can see some differences. I'm a Salesian sister, very, and I pay attention to young people. So I thought that highlighting the contribution made by women could be of great help for those who wanted to address the economy that may seem to be a dry science, but as I show in my book, well, I show that the economy can be put at the service of the poorest for the benefit of inclusiveness. And I think that given the period we are going through, all these themes are important. The book was written before the pandemic, and this was a sort of a prophecy. So editors have suggested subtitle From Crisis to a New Season of Hope because it was published immediately after the lockdown, and we are right in the middle of a difficult period. Well, I think that this has been a problem, but also an opportunity on the other hand, because I think that thinking about some issues and thinking about the economy in a different manner, with a different look, couldn't have been understood before an event that has forced us to question, to challenge ourselves. So we have the right spirit to try and understand that there can be a different development for the economy. So we were reasoning with Flavia, so we tried and understood what the quality of the book could have been. So I tried to highlight the issues of labor, finance, and many others. And there's also an introduction about great themes of cooperation and common good. So I tried to highlight all these themes, showing as a fil rouge for each theme what the contribution has been made by some women. And at the end, we understand that this fil rouge is the fact of thinking about poverty, inclusiveness, common good, common goods. When women focus on the economy, they do so because they're open to an integral human development. Of course, we cannot generalize things, but this is the main pathway. And the result being is that greater contribution of women to the economy can contribute to enriching this science, not only in speculative terms, but for the very progress of society. Thank you very much. Well, clearly enough, you may have understood that this is a theoretical book, but the beauty of Alessandra is that she's not only an expert in theory. Over the years, she has been committed in schools, in Auxilium. She's a professor in Auxilium. So she spreads information, but she also has a media interest to spread information through the media and to allow people understand woman economy and a more inclusive type of economy, a new idea of economy, and to make the world better understand this. So could you spend a few words about this commitment of yours and the fact that you've been involved in so many realities, your friendship with Pope Francis, for example, and the fact that he really appreciates you and the way you manage to understand your role, your commitment, this more institutional role and commitment hand in hand with your scientific background and your role as a professor.
Domanda semplice ma complessa.
Well, it may seem to be a simple question, but it's quite complex and complicated. Well, I've started for 10 years by now working with the Italian Bishops' Conference for the Catholic weeks, and I've been more and more involved in many commissions of the Vatican, and then I've been selected as state councillor. Now, the origin of the book is the following. I've always worked, including the academic and economic world. These are all domains dominated by men. And this has not raised issues to me, but I've always asked myself this question in participating in conferences for the academia and in institutions and institutional frameworks. My question was not only about the fact that I was the only religious woman, the only sister, but why was I the only woman? And so this has always risen questions to me, and I've always tried and worked to change this situation, this status quo. So the dissemination work with the media stems from this because we want to reach out the greatest number of people, showing people that as women and as representatives of the church, we have a say, and we do so not out of personal interest, but thinking of common good. And this can be, as I was saying before, truly a rich wealth for everybody. So this explains the commitment that wants to be sort of scientific commitment with the scientific publications of research studies. And at the same time, this is also commitment for dissemination, because if some messages remain on the level of the academia, they cannot reach out to the ordinary people. And as the foundress and the member of the community of professors, I'm the director of the scientific committee of the School of Civil Economics. Now, the passion of us civil economists is the following. This new way of thinking about the economy, civil economics. Antonio Genovesi was an abbot, and he used to maintain that the ultimate goal of the economy, alongside with happiness and the pursuit of happiness for everybody, the ultimate goal should be to make society, the economy, and the world more civilized. And you do so not only writing or reading books, but there's a need to be serious in scientific research. But let's get back to the book. As you already said, for each chapter of the book, you report thinking of a woman economist that has marked the progress and history of the economic theory. Would you like to mention one of them that in a way should be rediscovered or studied more thoroughly, and that in this very specific moment, who's thinking right now could really help us or take us towards a different future? Well, if I may, I will mention two of them. One, the first woman, uh, she was the only one until last year, the first Nobel Prize laureate for the economy, Eleanor Armstrong. She worked on the common goods and on cooperation. Now we have another one that was awarded the Nobel Prize. Do I like in her studies? I like the fact that she proves that there's a way of cooperating and of reaching the ultimate goals for which there's need for everybody to cooperate. And this is topical if we think of respect of the planet, of the care for the planet. These are all commitments asking for everybody to collaborate, to cooperate in a world where it's easy to be free riders. What does that mean? To make the most of the results of others' cooperation without playing one's own role. If everybody acts that way, you cannot obtain results. It's beautiful to have not polluted beach or plastic-free beach or unpolluted sea. If everybody plays their role in such a world, those who are only interested about their good means that if the others do so, I can avoid doing so. For example, with separate waste collection, if many people reason like that, there's imbalance because nobody does anything and nobody's going to take care. And there have been many attempts based on incentives. And the incentive theory is more belonging to men. It's a theory rewarding or punishing people depending upon their individual interests. So to focus on primary passions of people. And there's a very beautiful passage of her lecture consisting in saying, I've always thought that human beings are, by their very nature, inclined to cooperation, a propensity to cooperation. I do not think that they are just moved by institutional interests. If the 20th century institutions I mean, those that were supposed to be take passion and convert them into something that was all right for the common good. I need to say that the new institutions today are those that need to be to prove to be able to take the best of the human being out of souls and arts. Sorry about that, Sister Alessandra. There are noises, there's the background noise. There's been a noise here in my place. Well, there was a noise at my place. Sorry about that. So I was saying we need institutions able to take out the best of the human being. The second is a philosopher, an economist, and she's been working with us, the economists, in the organization of the economy of Francesco. Is the Canadian philosopher Tedeschi. And I think that in this time of pandemic, she's something more to tell us and which can be better understood than before. Jennifer Tedeschi has a theory on how to change the social standards of work of labor. And she starts off from a prerequisite. There are two fundamental dimensions, two key dimensions characterizing the human being, labor and care. As far as labor is concerned, we know how much the dimension of labor characterizes the human being. So if there's no work, it is not possible to flourish as a person. Jennifer Nevesky maintains that the other dimension characterizing us as human beings is the fact of taking care one of the others for the others. Now, over the history, this dimension has been only with women and the house. And the result of this has been the development of a society where the fact that this was the work of women of the private sphere has downgraded care, and care has not been developed. Jennifer Nevesky imagines a world where she says, now the first question we ask a person when we meet with new people is, what's your occupation, what's your job? Now she says, I dream of a world where immediately after the name, we ask, who do you care for? And for care to become horizontal, mainstream, attention. And today we've understood with the pandemic that it is of paramount importance to take care one of the others. For this to happen, we need to change the social standards about labor. And this is our proposal, considering also robots in labor, which is reducing the jobs, and everybody is concerned about this. A solution some suggest is revenue for everybody, an income for all, to maintain demand high and not to be worried about the rest. And her proposal is that we need new standards on labor. And according to these new standards, the current full-time should be turned into part-time work. So the new part-time work should substitute the full-time work of today. So nobody should work more than 30 hours per week. At least in Western countries, the average is 40 hours a week. But at the same time, everybody should spend at least 12 hours for care, not professional care for which you need a specialization, but take care of a child or of an elderly person, to be able to read a book to somebody who's blind, or accompanying a disabled person. And since there are cycles in life, I cannot see this on a weekly basis, but this standard should be respected over 1 year. When there's a greater need to take care of the family, this should take place in the family. If in a family you have not dependent children, you can take care of people in your neighborhood, and today with new technologies it would be very easy to do so. So care would be shared, would be for all. There would be new social standards, but in order to have this, we need legislators or MPs that need to understand what caring for others really means. Otherwise, care will always be downgraded and neglected or overlooked. If Patrizia agrees, I should like to hand over to Patrizia for questions, if we have received the questions. So thank you very much, Sister Alessandra, because myself, I work at USG, and it's fantastic that a sister works in the economy. When reading that you happened by chance, and the fact that you're present in institutional fora, and this makes religious life not only more visible, but having a greater impact for truly bring about change. I should like to read a few quotations from your book. So I will be slowly for translation, and this is the dedication you created for the book to all the people who, with their work, their thinking, and their creativity, contribute to making the economy an instrument to put at the service of humankind and of our common home. Well, I feel that this attempt of a circular economy allows the dream of Pope Francis to come true, to implement Laudato Si. I have a question for you, and I do hope that Flavia agrees before leaving space to further questions. I've read twice the first part, because all your theories on cooperation have raised many questions to me, and the first is the following. Why do some people cooperate and others don't? Why is it so difficult to develop a society very much based on cooperation and not only on competition? And these two items, cooperation and competition, are they truly juxtaposed? I mean, cooperation and competition, are these two items truly juxtaposed? These are difficult questions indeed. As far as your first question is concerned, as I was saying, but I cannot go into further details, not to run the risk of making my presentation too technical. Well, it is proven that when there's need for voluntary based cooperation, I was mentioning the example of the environment, but just think of a group that need to develop an event. So whenever there's need for everybody's contribution, but this contribution cannot be just governed or regulated by a contract, by an agreement. So it is shown, it is proven that unfortunately the balances of non-cooperation are much easier to be reached than cooperation. Sorry about that, Sister Alessandra. It's very difficult to us because there's a background noise. So we cannot really follow you. Sorry about that, but this is the inconvenience of this technology, and we are in houses, and this is the inconvenience of ordinary daily life. So thank you very much, Alessandra. It was very difficult to, and these are the issues raised by smart working. Don't worry about that. And sorry for interrupting you. Well, as I was saying, cooperation, when there's a cooperation, well, it's very beautiful, but this is not a balance, because every behavior, every individual behavior aimed at making the most of the situation pays off more than continuing cooperation. If we think of the dynamic in an office, if you have to organize an event, if others are committed and I do not commit myself, if I'm confident that others continue with their commitment, it's better for me to do the minimum needed, because all things will work all the same, and I will not be tired. Now, due to these people, it happens that people do not accept to cooperate always if they see that others are not cooperating. As a result, one wants to find a balance, and these are traps of poverty. There's that's the end of cooperation, and there's no incentive to cooperate again. So it's difficult to cooperate because there's a need for intrinsic motivation and a look that is not only on me, on myself, but it should be larger and should take into account others. How can we encourage cooperation? If we understand that we are working for something great, and there's we, us, if we have to make a decision and if we ask not what is my self-interest, but what is in the interest of all of us, now clearly enough, the best operation would be everybody's cooperating, and I do my part in this cooperation, and this has to do with education, with social standards, with messages of communication. And I repeat it once again, cooperation needs to be preserved because it's far easier to introduce balances not based on cooperation in civil understanding of the economy. Competition is not the opposite for cooperation. The opposite of cooperation is non-cooperation. Competition can be a force that might encourage us to make improvements. We are accustomed to considering competition as fighting with one another. Instead, competition could be thought of as a contest, as a competition for others to be more satisfied ourselves, but this is a thrust to collective improvement. My ultimate goal is not to take you out because you're my competitor, but the ultimate goal is to better serve my client, my customer. And if I do this better and better, this might be of help for others. So competition and cooperation, collaboration can be together. So you confirm what some say, that we are not naturally for cooperation. Cooperation is the result of a socialization and education processes. So I can see a great role played here by women religious. And I have another question before handing over to other participants or Flavia, should she have more questions. And here again, another quotation from your book. Measurements in the economy are important. If we do not measure, we cannot appreciate, we cannot value, and this means that we cannot improve clearly enough. As a result of the goals we have, we're going to measure the goal that seems to be more appropriate, considering the end goal that we have. And so GDP does not measure happiness, and you say in your book that that my happiness is reduced if I want a disproportionate increase of my income. Can we make a connection with Laudato Si, Buen Vivir, good living? How can all this be developed within the logic of integral human development? Well, I'd say that we have to start off from the concept of the person, and this is what I say when I talk about economic models. We think that economic models are something technical, but as a matter of fact, we have to always make assumptions about how the human being is done. If the person is a naturally relational and social being, it's a being that is not only contented with the material goods, but needs something else to live, a transcendental, spiritual dimension in a larger sense. And if the economy has to be the science allowing for good living, and not just the science of wealth, as it has become over history, but the economy should be the science allowing people to have the means to be fully realized. Now, so this means that the economy should help people reach this goal. The first step towards realizing these goals, achieving these goals, is to start off from what is existing. I cannot change a situation in a place if I do not have concrete means. And this is the reason why measurements are important, because they allow us to understand what the current situation to take stock of is. And what is most important is to understand where we are heading to. Now, we have this saying in the economy: what the economy cannot see is what is lived out. If I only consider GDP, what is GDP? And there's much talk about GDP today because GDP is important measurement. Now, the gross domestic product is the economic value of whatever is produced in a nation over a given period of time. Let's suppose 1 year. And this is an important measurement because it has to do with the number of existing businesses, the number of jobs, but it cannot be the measurement of how people get realized. If we make confusion in our ideas and we think that the only goal of a nation should be to increase GDP, well, we are leaving something behind, because also the expenses for psychotropic substances make the pill, and some expenses that have nothing to do with the living well of people. Now, we have to consider the integral human development. And of course, we need to be based on integral human relationships. So we have to measure everything, have to measure also the relations. How can I say that we better live in a city rather than in another city, only on the basis of GDP, or considering also the relations between people? If I measure relations between people, the number of cinema tickets that have been sold, how many people enter a shopping mall, because I consider that these are measurable things. Am I measuring the relationship or the lack of relationship that allows me to be focused on something else? Is this the social life I want? So it is difficult to truly measure relationships. And we've done so a little bit because with the Avvenire and the Festival of the Civil Economy, we've conducted an inquiry that wanted to be an alternative on inquiries on the quality of life that is carried out every year in Italy, measuring the civil and social capital we have every year in Italy. And if we can see these things, we can improve them. If we cannot see, we end up by destroying things. You're opening so many windows, and it comes to my mind that the whole work of women and of sisters of religious women is not accounted. So if we want to propose churches GDP, this item would be very interesting. So my colleague Claudia has a question. She asks, as you've said, now the pathway of studies to become an economist is not the same for all congregations. How could we promote a training for action-based economy, so not only based on research studies? Well, I have to say that for quite some time, I've been working to sensitize the world of religious men and women. Why? Because, in my opinion, we have a mistaken idea about the economy, and not only the economy within religious life, because this is quite often considered to be as a necessary weight. It's just considered to be the management of works without understanding that that concept of integral human development and integral ecology asks us to be focused on the human being, and in order to take care of all the dimensions of the human being, we need to understand all of them. Over the years in religious life, we've witnessed excessive spiritualization that has taken us out of the world and has made us less and less concrete. And we've seen that many things have been realized by religious men and women for economic and social development as well. Well, I feel that this is a dimension, especially at this time of a pandemic, we have to take stock across the world of the impoverishment of big economic issues to be tackled. And so we need to understand in order to talk in the contexts, being in the contexts and not being without, being within and not without the context. A thrust that has allowed me to think about more and more about the economy was the fact that the speeches of the church, I felt them to be something coming from outside without making a difference in what was being built in the economy. Instead, I think that today there's a desperate and urgent need. People are asking of us this, and as women, we are much more credible today. So we need to be within and not without the context. but we have to take an approach transcending issues. So we have to put together the spiritual dimension with the political, social, economic commitments. And I think that this is a frontier on which we cannot but walk as religious men and women. Very well. Needless to say that I fully agree with this. So thank you very much, Claudia, for asking the question. I don't know whether Flavia has further questions. Otherwise, get to conclusions. I don't know whether your connection is unstable for the fact that you give many interviews, but I'm afraid of losing you. Well, I have a very short question. Why short? It's not only short, but I know also that Alessandra could speak for hours about this, but please, this is a question that has been shared by the publishing houses cooperating with us. They're all very much committed to making widespread some themes. So they have given interviews with Alessandra, and it's the economy of Pope Francis. So we were waiting for this event that was scheduled last May, but unfortunately the pandemic has postponed it. But we are more than sure that we're going to meet back next November on these issues, on these themes. Am I right? November? So could you please spend a few words on this event on which you've been working? You're continuing to work, and it's scheduled for next November. How about after the suspension, and what are the new ideas that we'll be finding in it after the pandemic? I have to say that the pandemic has been suffering for everybody, but has also been great opportunity that the community of the economy of Francesco has had. Well, I've written an article that will be published tomorrow on Roma 7. What happened then? Well, we have 12 thematic villages. The participants had already been selected. We were preparing to get to Assisi, spend 2.5 days to make proposals. Then there was the pandemic, so we had to postpone everything. And we know that young people are smarter. They're able to get organized with distant villages have started working, and we all share a platform, and there's at least one webinar a day. So in Assisi, we were supposed to work in 12 separate distinct villages. So we were physically separated. Now villages make proposals open to everybody, and everybody can participate. So I'm a member of the village about finance, but as a guest I can follow developments of other villages. The fact of having the same platform means that events do not take place all at the same time. Say, young people getting to know each other, making proposals, and when we are going to meet in person, this will be items in a process and not just an event that could remain dead-lit. So we're very happy of what is being done. I'm the coordinator of 2 villages, but they've been started, and young people are working on their own. Young people of the village working care working a sort of encyclical on work and care, and there are webinars open to everybody, so I invite you to take part in them. So there's energy amongst the young people that makes me feel that the future will be even more beautiful than the present. Thank you very much, Sister Alessandra. So we are getting to the conclusion. So am I right, Flavia? And we have a fantastic, brilliant, bright question that would need another meeting, but let me reassure you, the date for the economy of Francesco is November 14th. No, it's November 21st. Very well. And UISG, we are thinking of thinking about it in the period September, October, making links between the economy and education, because both themes have a global impact, and these are two closely related themes. Maria Lia Zervino asks the last question. It's brilliant, it's fantastic. She asks, can we establish relationships between women and the implementation of Laudato Si? So first of all, I should like to say hello to Maria Lia. We are members of the Women's Council, the Pontifical Council of Culture, and we've been sharing a very positive experience. So I'm very happy to work with her and to have had the opportunity of meeting with them. So it's a very challenging question. Let me spend just a few words, but we are going to address this in an event that we are organizing with women reading Laudato Si and putting into practice. Now, getting back to the book, I'd like to say that economy and ecology have the same root, oikos, which means earth. Economy means management, care, handling, taking care of the house, the common house, and the planet as well. And so care of the house and the common home, a care that we've said has been only the work of women privately, but this is the moment when women instead can make their contribution and can do so truly with grace and with a special attention, as I was saying before, special attention to common good, inclusivity, inclusiveness, and the fact of not excluding everybody. No one should be left behind. And attention that women naturally have attention to life, including the life of the planet. So care of common home, care of relationships. And I believe that reading, but also implementation of Laudato Si might and already makes a contribution by women that allows us to feel this encyclical much more cherished by us, and we can prove that it is easy to put it into practice because some things are second nature to women. For this reason, I should like to leave this as an open question. I should like to thank for this question because the next themes to be addressed might be on this contribution. I've seen this in Women Economists, so we can see this considering integral ecology, and we can see what the contribution made by women can be. This is not just a theory, but it's a practical, which has to do with life. This does not mean excluding men, and I think that you've understood this all too well, and you may understand this if you read my book, but it's putting a special emphasis, and this has not been done over the years, so we've left a part of the world behind. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Sister Alessandra. We know that we've taken too much of your time out of your many commitments. I should like to thank you not only for having written this book and for participating in this webinar today, but thank you very much also for accepting over the last few years, sometimes with difficulty, so many institutional offices, functions at the Vatican, but also with the Italian government. As Flavia said, you are a member of the council of this task force, to put it this way, this group. It's a new renaissance, a new recovery. And I think that this greatly helps religious life and women to be out of their invisibility when women accept to take institutional positions. So we try and find the space to go heated, to say our word, and I'm sure that you're able to speak for other women because you travel a lot, you listen to many people. So I should like to thank you on behalf and in the name of USG. She's our herald, so we support you. So I feel very much the responsibility of not being left alone or with just a few people with me. So there's a need to open up new pathways. Well, of course. And I'd say that at least all the people involved in this meeting are there, side by side with you. And I think that there's a whole community supporting you. It's invisible community, but it's very present, very spiritual, very present community. I should like to thank all participants, but I should like to thank Edizioni San Paolo for accepting our invitation. Thank you very much, Flavia. And I should like to thank USMI, USMI. We accompany one another in this path of cultural animation. I should like to thank our translator. She's greatly helped us, Gabriella. That's been a pleasure. And as Maria Lia said, I should like to thank not only religious women, but all lay women. So I'm a lay woman, and I fully agree with what you said. By way of conclusion, I should like to quote again your book. It's a question. I like questions very much. This is a question I leave for everybody, for everyone to find their own answer to the question. What has the economy lost without the look of women and without a look on women? And I do hope that this look and this word, well, we will be able to take them as women, because it may happen that others are speaking about us. Instead, Sister Alessandra's experience may help all of us present here to say our word in this world. So thank you very much for your participation. So have a nice day, have a nice weekend as well. So thank you everybody for participating. I should like to thank everybody for participating. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. So despite the difficulties of connection, we made it. I was a little bit worried, Sister Alessandra. So thank you very much, all of you.
Aspetta che apriamo anche tutti i microfoni così.
Scusate, avevo tolto il microfono, dicevo che ho cambiato anche l'hotspot.
I muted myself. I changed the hotspot because it was not working, but it's still whimsical. We're all fragile. We're fragile, all of us, just like the network. Thank you very much, Sister Alessandra. Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Arrivederci a tutte e buon fine settimana.
Bye bye. Ciao, grazie,
Ciao.
grazie a te.